One of my favorite scriptures is Micah 6:8, and in the midst of all the idolatry that was going on in Israel, God said, well, this is what I'm going to require of you, to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly. And we don't get the mercy side real well in the church. We kind of get the justice side a little bit. We're gonna bring justice, and we're gonna make sure people understand right and wrong. We get the justice side, but we sure don't walk humbly. And humility, to me, as a Christian, as a spiritual leader, is admitting, even as a pastor, a leader, whatever you are, you don't have a corner on truth. Like, you don't get it all. You haven't seen every side of God. You haven't figured out every part of the scriptures.
But how many churches have been built on just that?
Yeah.
We've got the answers. Mm-hmm. Come to us because we got the answers. Yeah. We know what's going on. Come here. Everyone else is wrong. We're right.
And it's not to say that I don't believe with all of my heart that Jesus lived and died and rose from the dead. I do. I have no personal questions about that. But those are the basics. All of the other stuff, I mean, come on. There is so much to this walk of faith, and that's why it is a walk of faith. I mean, we don't see it all. We don't know it all. That's why the scripture says, and it's interesting, this is found in 1 Corinthians 13, that we see through a glass dimly. Yeah. But it's a passage on love. And it's like, listen, lest you think you've got it all figured out, just go back to this. Love people. Right. Love your neighbor. Love God. And if you can get love right, you'll see all of your knowledge dimly, and you may see parts and glimpses of truth, but you're not going to get all the truth right all the time, but you can get love right. We know how to love people right. I mean, it's clear. We can look at how Jesus walked and how Jesus loved, and I think all of us can kind of figure out when something is loving and when it isn't. So,
at Oral Roberts' funeral, his grandson was there. His grandson's been on some national talk shows. He's gay. Has come out. Oral Roberts' gay grandson. He did not sit with the family. He sat with Carlton. The family, he's an outcast from the family because they believe that of all the work that Oral has done for 60 years, that having a gay grandson, he'd already had a gay son, having a gay grandson is going to destroy their ministry. So Carlton sat there in the funeral thinking, how can you treat your own child like that? Mm-hmm. And then the answer came, you will if you think that God does.
Yeah. Wow. Well, this issue is very personal to me because my middle son's gay, and I'll never forget when he came out. I mean, I'm a pastor in a evangelical church that is growing, and we had him in counseling, trying to fix him right, because we discovered his inclination, if you will, his tendencies when he was much younger, and so being Christian parents and a pastor, we try to get him into counseling and try to help him be fixed. And so he comes to my wife and I at the time, and he says, and he invites us to his counselor, says, I'm not fighting this anymore. I have prayed, for 20 years that this would go away, and God has not taken it away. I have fought this, and I just cannot continue to lie to you and to myself, and I'm just going to speak for myself, but I was, as a pastor at the time and in the evangelical church world, I was like, oh, this can't be happening to my son, and I was, wanting to cure him and fix him, and my response to him was just shame and anger and I remember meeting with him a few days later and producing a document listing all the reasons why he has made the worst choice in his life. And it caused a divide, and it caused him a lot of pain and a lot of hurt and a lot of shame. And then about a year and a half later, I disclose my own personal problems, my own personal sin. And I resign my church. I meet with my family, and I tell them this double life that I'd been living for a number of years. It started with pornography and resulted in being unfaithful to my wife. And it was ugly. And I remember telling my family that, and telling my 3 boys, and telling my wife. And I was prepared for the worst when it came to my middle son. I just knew he was going to hate me forever because I had judged him so harshly for what he had been through. And now he's going to find out that while I was judging him, I had my own crime. Right. And so I get into my disclosure and my confession with my family, and I get halfway through it, and all of a sudden that son just breaks down crying. And he runs over to me, wraps his arms around me, and says, "Dad, I love you, I love you, I love you, and I'll never give up on you." And I was just broken, and it's been 3 years now. And there was, in all of my recovery these last 3 years, and it has been strenuous, it has been the hardest 3 years of my life to turn my life around and to get up on my feet again. But there was no greater love that anyone showed me than that son. And if I didn't deserve it. I deserved him looking me in the eye and calling me a hypocrite and calling me a liar and calling me the worst father that has ever lived. And yet he showed me love like I've never had love in my life. And so I have a great deal of compassion, not just for people in the gay community, but people anywhere that are struggling, because I've been through my own struggles. I've dealt with my own sin, my own pain, my own shortcoming, the confusion that I've had in my own life. And I've had to figure all that out, and I'm still figuring all that out. And so I'm just choosing to today to love people. I'm just like, you know what? I've needed so much love and so much grace in my life that I'm not going to be the guy that has got your life all figured out and tell you. I just believe that if I love you well, Chris, Mike, if I love you well, if I give the love of Christ to you, somehow that's going to make a difference in whatever parts of your world that God's wanting to work in. And I'll tell you, rules and laws and people pointing their finger at me didn't change me. It was the love of good people who surrounded me and said, "Blaine, we're not going to give up on you when you have exposed your worst to the world. We are going to be there for you." And it's been that love that has changed my life.
And isn't that such a easier way to live?
A lot less burden on the shoulders.
Yeah.
Mike had said something interesting too about, you do what you think your father would do. Whether it's, God or dad, our earthly dads or whatever. But, it's like, we were brought up, all of us are brought up differently. But, when the rubber hits the road, we do what we've been taught. And, whether it's somebody, dealing with a parent that was a bully and they in turn bully others.
Yeah.
Or, or whatever. But it's just, and I'm sure that when you made that list, you were doing what you felt like, whether it was your earthly father or heavenly father or whatever. But, it's like our peers, we we look to the people that have gone before us, and that's where we get a lot of how we're supposed to.
Yeah.
You know, and you look regionally, whether it's East Coast, West Coast, or Midwest, or whatever, you're gonna see differences there.
Yeah.
And you know, there's a statement that I've made for years, and that is that people usually do the best they can with what they have, and that includes everybody, really, I think.
Yes.
But I'm doing the best I can with what I have. I'm just trying to change what I have.
Yeah.
If I can increase my tools, if I can get better tools to deal with my own stuff, then I can do better.
Yeah.
But that's where you were.
Yeah.
At that moment, that is where you were. And then time passes and you're at a very different place. You know, but that's incredible that he met you with so much grace and mercy and love, and that's gotta just melt you.
It has. And I don't know, you know, I think in the church world, and that's kind of the only world I know. I can't talk business and I can't talk other worlds, so my world is the church world. So,
Right.
But I think in the church world, especially those of us that assume roles of leadership on any level, we've got to kind of take the cape off. We can't be the Superman, the superhero. I really think, to me, it takes a lot more courage to be Clark Kent than it does to be Superman. And
Certainly.
And Superman doesn't fail. You know, when he comes out of that phone booth,
I can't relate to Superman.
No, all is well, and
I can.
he can fly, and he can, pick up stuff and throw stuff, and
Wears his underwear on the outside.
exactly.
I cannot relate to that.
But I think the reason people love Superman is because of Clark Kent. The reason people like Batman is because of Bruce Wayne. It's the humanity that we see in these superheroes, and so there's nothing wrong with us as Christians or just as human beings with doing good, doing super things, helping people, loving the poor, caring, for the hurting, and inventing things that change the world. Those are great. But at the same time, I think especially in the church world that our congregants, our communities are longing for leaders that will take off the cape and be real and be transparent and say, you know what, I don't know what you're dealing with, but I'm sure dealing with some stuff, and here's kind of how I've walked through it, rather than saying this is this is what I've always done so that I've never sinned or I've never had a problem. I mean, I grew up under pastoral leadership, and literally for 20 years never heard one time where the guy failed. I mean, it was just
Me too.
one, so that's, again, you talked about modeling. That's kind of the model I was presented. And so I felt almost trapped, like I could not fail. And of course that's impossible because I was,
Right.
No one knew it, but I was failing every day. I mean, I was coming up short every day. So the alternative was to hide it. I got to try to. And then the more you hide it and the less you can confess it and talk about it and get help, the worse it gets, because you're not getting any help and you're not really accessing the community that God has given you in this church to get the help that you need. And that's why we have community, because we were never meant to live this life of faith alone.
On the next episode of Smoke Break.
I resigned the week before Easter, and the church was told not to contact me or my family, that they were not to have any contact with us. There was bitterness, there was anger, but I got through it, and I discovered that there was this whole other part of the church world that was different than that, and that there are communities that embrace and that care and that love.